I just want to point out a few things here in the passages that I've read to you. First of all, Jesus is saying in very plain terms, and he's repeating himself. He says, I am the bread of life. He says that several times. He says, truly, truly, I tell you. And whenever he uses that expression, what he's about to say is very important, and he's giving his listeners the heads up that says, listen carefully to what I'm about to say. And he chooses his words very carefully. He says, I am the living bread. And the bread which I shall give for the life of the world is my flesh. And later on he says, truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. For my flesh is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. So Jesus is saying this very literally. He doesn't mean this symbolically. Later on, his disciples were his friends. These were the ones who followed him, who were believing his teachings. When they heard Jesus give this teaching, they said it is hard to believe, and they walked away from him. Now, if Jesus was only speaking symbolically, if he only meant this whole thing metaphorically, he would not have let his disciples walk away with this misunderstanding. I believe he might have said something like, no, don't go, you misunderstood what I meant. I didn't mean it literally, I only meant it symbolically. But he couldn't have said it any clearer, and he couldn't say to them, don't go, because he said it as plainly as he could, and they couldn't handle it. And so he let them go. And then he turned to his 12 apostles. These were his closest followers. And he said to Simon Peter, will you also go? And Simon Peter said, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And they stuck with him. So this is why we believe that Jesus meant what he said when he said that his flesh and his blood are true food and true drink, and unless we eat them, we will not have life. So when did Jesus prepare this? How did he set it up that we might eat his flesh and drink his blood? Well, we turn to St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, and we read, Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, Take, eat, this is my body. And he took a chalice, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. So that has happened at the Last Supper, just before Jesus is about to be arrested and crucified. In the upper room with his closest friends, he set up this Last Supper. He celebrated the first Mass there in the upper room. And then he said to his 12 apostles, when you get together, do this in remembrance of me. And then he created priests and gave them the authority to take bread and wine and to do what Jesus did, to pray over the bread and to pray over the wine and to change them, just like Christ did, into his very self, his body, his blood, his soul, and his divinity. And this is why we Catholics believe and teach that Jesus is truly present in the Holy Sacrament of the altar. Thanks for watching. I'm Father John Fletcher, and I'll see you next time on 5 Minute Faith.